Geek Therapy Radio.
How's it going, my geeks? Long time no talk to? It seems that way. Since I went down from doing 5 podcasts per week, it seems like it's fewer and far between that we do talk. Now, I do want to get back up to 5 podcasts per week. We'll see if that happens. I'm itching to do that. I want to do that. I would love to do that. All I can say is within the next few podcasts, you'll hear why it all makes sense to going down to more limited release. And it's coronavirus. Yes, it's what's going on in the world right now. Yes, it's that my schedule has gotten twice as busy among all of these things. We've talked about that ad nauseum in past episodes, that I kind of feel guilty that my schedule has become more busy when so many other people's schedules have become, unfortunately, less busy. But that's where we're at right now in terms of behind the scenes at Geek Therapy Radio. It will make more sense over the next few episodes as to why I've limited the amount of podcast I put out. And hopefully that I'll be able to get back to a perhaps 5 podcasts per week schedule at some point in the future. I would like to do that. I think right now I'm still doing pretty good at 2 podcasts a week. There's a lot of podcasts out there that are just once a week. There's a lot of podcasts out there that are once a month or maybe once every 2 weeks, what have you. So I try to at least, at bare minimum, do 2 or 3 per week. You may or may not have noticed that not last weekend, but the weekend before last weekend, I didn't podcast the broadcast. And as you know, I've been very candid with you, my audience here. I love all you geeks. I've been very candid with you that, with what I hate to use the word struggling with, as I'm trying to tool what the broadcast is versus what the podcast is. And in the last broadcast, since it's kind of more general audience, I won't say that I went off on a rant. You guys know that I go off on rants on here. That's no problem. But I don't know. There was something about the last broadcast that, while it was enjoyable, and I have no qualms about airing it over the radio, I just felt, maybe it's not the best podcast for a global audience. Maybe it was too specific to Houston. I was talking about a lot of people that you may not have ever heard of, that only people listening in Houston. And as of now, my show only airs in Houston. I just figured we're talking about local, like, news anchors and local media types here around Houston, that if you're listening in Israel, what's going on? Asaf in Israel, if you're listening anywhere else in the world, Mexico, if you're listening in the Netherlands, if you're listening in England, if you're listening all across Europe, Japan, wherever you are, that it may not be the most interesting thing to you if I'm talking about people specifically. For instance, just real briefly, I was talking about somebody I grew up with, who was a co-anchor with my dad when he was a news anchor here in Houston on Channel 13, Melanie Lawson. And I talked about Melanie Lawson for a little bit and Dave Ward for a little bit. Those of you in Houston know exactly who I'm talking about. But for the global audience, it just spent not too much time. It spent a lot of time on local personalities. And I just didn't think, this wouldn't be the best broadcast to podcast, so I didn't. Maybe I'll release it at a later date. I still, of course, have it saved. It's still in the archives. Maybe I'll release it at a later date. Maybe I'll at least put it on the Patreon or something like that, just for more content there. But who knows? I'm just being candid with you. That's what I do here in Geek Therapy Radio. I always let you know just what's going on in my mind. Whether you agree with it, whether you think I'm overthinking about it, or I'm not thinking about it enough, who knows? I just like to tell you guys about that. I don't like to be so mysterious to my audience. There are some things to keep sacred. Yes, there are some personal things to keep sacred. But as far as me personally and what I'm doing with Geek Therapy Radio, open book. And I think I owe it to all of you to be an open book like that. I don't want to be mysterious. I don't want to leave you ever in the dark with what I'm doing here at Geek Therapy Radio specifically. So thank you again for bearing with me through all of this. Like I said, the reduced podcasting schedule, it'll all make sense here in the next few days, within the next few podcasts, in addition to my explanation about coronavirus. Real quick, the YouTube channel just today, just within hours, just ticked over 3,000 subs. So thank you very much for subscribing to the YouTube channel. Thank you so much for sharing it with your friends. The latest video on there right now, I believe, I can look at it. The last video I uploaded was how your microphone, if you're a content creator, if you create videos on YouTube, that the best camera for YouTube is your microphone. That if the audio game isn't strong, it doesn't matter what the camera is. It doesn't matter what the quality of the video, of the visual is. It doesn't matter about codecs. It doesn't matter if you're using a $50,000 red camera. It doesn't matter if you're using a $20 webcam potato camera. If the audio is bad, it makes the video look bad. It's kind of this interesting psychology between the link in your brain between what you hear and what you see, that no matter what you're seeing, you're going to perceive it to look terrible if you can't understand what the person's saying, if you can't hear it very well. So the most important thing for video creators is not the camera, it's the microphone, and it's how you use the microphone. So that's the latest video up on YouTube. It's kind of a short one. What is it, 6 or 7 minutes? It's less than 10 minutes. And I've gotten to the point with YouTube videos and retooling kind of how I make the videos, because a video like audio production in YouTube videos, that should be something that gets more traction than usual. However, I didn't stretch this one out to hit that 10-minute algorithm. I could say everything I needed to say in less than 10 minutes, so I just put out a video that was less than 10 minutes long. I wasn't going to drag out something that I can explain in less than 10 minutes. Should I have dragged it out to 10 minutes? Should I have been more specific and deep dive into it more than I should? But no, it was a crash course, and it could be done in less than 10 minutes. And for those of you who don't know, 10 minutes is the magic number when it comes to a YouTube video length. And I can tell you just by my own uploads and watching my own analytics that if you upload videos that are less than 10 minutes long, they get significantly less views than videos that are over 10 minutes long. That means that if it's not over 10 minutes long, YouTube doesn't pick up on it and it doesn't recommend it to other people, other viewers. So in contrast, my PSP video it's approaching something like 250,000 views. It's doing really, really well. It's something like 10 or 11 minutes long, and I'm getting the bulk of the views for that video from suggested videos. That means when you're watching some other tech YouTube channel or some other retro gaming channel and it's talking about a PSP or a Nintendo or anything like that, that when you get done with that video, the recommended video comes up in the search, like suggestions on the right-hand side of the screen. My video shows up there because it's about a similar subject matter, and it's over 10 minutes long. And the name of the game in YouTube is retaining viewers for as long as possible. So to retain viewers as long as possible, to keep as many eyes on YouTube as possible, it recommends longer videos versus recommending shorter videos. That's just the way the algorithm works. So should I have made the YouTube microphone camera video 10 minutes long and gotten a lot more views? Sure, I could have. But I could say everything I wanted to say in less than 10 minutes. So kind of when it comes to that specific video, it's kind of screw the algorithm. People are just they'll stumble across it however they stumble across it, and that's great. That's all I wanted to do with it. The next video is going to be longer. It's what's currently in the pipe right now. It's going to be a video about my favorite PDAs, personal digital assistants. I've talked about PDAs on the show recently, you know as well as I have. You listen to the show. So I'll talk about my first Palm Pilot, my first Windows CE device, and then my all-time dream computer, which I finally was able to get, the HP Jornada 680. That video is probably going to be over 10 minutes. Does that mean it's going to instantly get as many views as something else? No, there's still no guarantee, but 10 minutes does hit the algorithm better. So stay tuned for that. all that to say, thank you for 3,000 subs on the YouTube channel. I wouldn't have any growth at all if it wasn't for you. So thank you so much for all your support in any avenue that Geek Therapy Radio takes. Alrighty, last order of business before we move on to the meat and potatoes of this podcast, which is Elon Musk and eccentric geniuses and mental disorders and psychology. It's quite the podcast today, but first, last order of business. On the subject of reduced podcast uploads, I think you've noticed that the podcasts that I have been releasing have been quite a bit longer than usual. Having a podcast over an hour long, an hour and a half long. On Patreon, at least, I released the conversation I had with Colin from This Does Not Compute. That was over 3 hours long that we talked about geek stuff. So the podcast, the uploads have been fewer, but they have been way longer on average. And maybe you guys appreciate that. Maybe you don't. I don't know. I just figured that if I'm reducing less, then maybe I would have them be longer. Maybe talk about more things within the podcast or talk longer about them. I don't know if that's good or bad. We'll see. But they are longer. Yeah, so that's it. All I was going to say is that speaking of long podcasts, last Friday, I recorded the show for this week, the broadcast for this week. I'm going to have to edit it down to 39 minutes. On the show was a roundtable. I had a roundtable discussion with Colin from This Does Not Compute, the 8-Bit guy, David Murray, and Clint from Lazy Game Reviews, and I. So 4 people. We talked over Skype. It was just a great geek conversation that goes from zero to 100 in about an hour and a half. The conversation is a little bit over 2 hours long. That's where I'm getting with all this. The conversation I had with the 8-Bit guy, Clint from LGR, and Colin from This Does Not Compute was over 2 hours long. It is a treasure trove of geekiness. I think I'm hitting a lot of common audiences here with what's coming down the pipe. So I know a lot of you are transplants, or you discovered me through the 8-Bit guy. A lot of you have discovered me through Colin from This Does Not Compute. A lot of you have discovered me through Clint and Lazy Game Reviews. Well, I have all 3 of them together. It's probably one of the few places you can hear those 3 huge tech YouTubers talking to each other, and we all just having a natural conversation together. It went really, really well. Like I said, over 2 hours long. It goes from 0 to 100. So the first bit of it is just the icebreaker questions. What is the first, piece of retro tech that kind of got you into tech? And it kind of goes from there until we have a very, very candid conversation about the psychological impact of the current lockdown status and quarantine status of the United States and around the world, and how that's affecting each of us differently. So, for instance, you could imagine, or maybe you can imagine, the different mindset that somebody like Clint and David Murray have, because they do YouTube full time. Not just YouTube full time, but they are kind of what do you call it, freelancers, so to speak. That's what they do full time. Clint, that's definitely what he does full time, and he doesn't have a whole lot of contact with the outside world right now. So he talked about the psychological impacts of that, how he's dealing with that. David, in a different boat. David has family around, so there's a different kind of aspect and different perception of what's going on in that scenario versus my scenario. Married, cats, and my wife is working from home. I'm still, doing my kind of double duty, busier schedule now. Colin still has his day job, plus he's doing the YouTube stuff, and it's kind of interesting to hear our perspectives. And I really am excited for all of you to hear that and hopefully to share that around, because again, it's Clint talking to the 8-Bit guy, talking to Colin talking to Clint, and Clint talking to Colin, and Colin talking to David Murray. It's a very interesting conversation from those in this tech sphere that we very much is look up to the right word, but we follow closely. They are our favorite retro tech YouTubers for sure, and modern tech as well. So I'm just thrilled that I was able to get them all in the same room, so to speak. Not the same room, but you get what I'm saying. On one Skype conversation, bouncing ideas off of each other, talking to each other. It's a very cool thing. It was like I said, over 2 hours long. That's coming up. Originally, I was thinking of putting that on Patreon, having just broadcasting and podcasting the 39-minute edited version. But I'm not doing that. I'm not putting this conversation behind a paywall because there's information that we talked about. There's a candidness there. There's an openness there that I don't want to lock away from people. I want it to be available to all of my listeners for you to share easily with other people who you may think are interested in that sort of thing, hearing from the 8-Bit Guy and Dave and Clint and Colin all in one place. We get real, like I said, with the psychology and what we're dealing with and mental health and everything having to do with the current situation of the planet, of the world, of the United States, specifically where we're at. But it's a common issue around the world. It's a pandemic. So it's a very interesting conversation. Of course, we talk a ton about technology and retro tech and all sorts of fun, cool things and reel-to-reels and PDAs and old computers and different fascinating things. It's a really, really cool, fun conversation. But towards the end, I'd say the last 30 to 45 minutes, if not the last hour, gets real in kind of the most refreshing way. I was very happy to have them all in one place at one time. It's kind of I don't want to say it's a once-in-a-lifetime experience, but they are 3 busy people, so it was great to have them all come to one place. And I only asked for 30 minutes, as typically I do with my guests. Hey, can we just go for 30 minutes talking about whatever? Oh, yeah, sure. 2 hours. They all, 3 of them at one time just sat. We all sat there for 2 hours. David complained that his butt started to hurt because he was sitting on a wooden stool. He was not planning on sitting there for 2 hours, but that's just how the conversation went. All 3 of them. It's great. So stay tuned for that. That's going to be, I don't want to say it's the next podcast because I might do one or at least one in between now and then, but we'll see. It's coming up here very, very shortly. All right, 16 minutes in, house cleaning done, but doesn't matter. I put the timestamps in the titles and description, so you could have skipped over all of that if you so chose to, though I hope you don't. There's a lot of good stuff in there, but meat and potatoes. Elon Musk has been quite the baffler over the past week or two. I kind of waited to comment on this. I didn't comment on the broadcast about this because I kind of wanted to sit and wait and see how I would approach his recent Twitter ramblings, I guess you could call it. I've talked about Elon Musk before on the show, and I'm sure many other shows, podcasts, broadcasts, talk about Elon Musk all the time, all sorts of editorials, all sorts of blogs about Elon Musk. Believe me, Elon Musk is no stranger to controversy. His name comes up often in tech conversation and geek conversation. He's kind of like a supreme geek overlord. We all have this, if you're a geek, we have this kind of, I can only speak for myself personally, but we have this kind of timid and trepidatious, is that a word? Trepidatious? I'm going to look that up right now. We feel weird about him. We very much respect him. I very much respect what he does, but at the same time, you keep him kind of at arm's length. Trepidatious. It is a word. Ooh, my brain is better than I think it is. Apprehensive or nervous, filled with trepidation. Quote, if you're trepidatious about foreign travel, start with an English-speaking country. I used a word that's real. Fun. So, I and many other geeks have a trepidatious relationship with Elon Musk where we respect him, but we're nervous about him, keep him at arm's length. For me, it became so much of an issue. And this is why I put a pin in how I was going to talk about Elon Musk this time, because I didn't want to come at it from just such a clear, cut and dry approach that so many other outlets seem to do. I try to look at it from all sides, and ideally, although I'm not perfect, ideally I would try to let you be the judge. I'll say what I say. Here's my opinions on it. Here's my research into it, whatever, and then leave you to come up with your own conclusions or your own, hopefully, open-mindedness. For me, a few years ago, it got to the point where I could already see the writing on the wall in Elon Musk's. I could see his genius, but it also became very apparent his eccentric attitude and his eccentric way of life, and we'll delve into that in a moment. And I kind of got this Howard Hughes vibe from him, which we'll talk about in a moment, a Nikola Tesla vibe from him, which we'll talk about in a moment, which all led me down the path of I had stock in Tesla. I owned stock in Tesla motor cars. At the time, well, I don't want to say what the stock was worth at the time. I got rid of it a few years ago, and I've kind of agreed with my own decision. I've kind of felt like maybe I shot myself in the foot with that decision, but overall, I feel comfortable with that decision. Elon Musk single-handedly can take down the prices, can cause the price of his stock to tumble, and it was such a roller coaster owning stock in Tesla, knowing that at any moment the CEO could tank your stock. Let's say, I don't think anybody was, any wise person was in this boat, but if they had their entire nest egg in Tesla, they could ruin that Elon Musk with one tweet could ruin people's retirements. That if they had that much stock in Tesla, that Musk could tweet something and then their entire retirement is shattered. That the stock prices for their stock in Tesla could come crumbling down and just ruin their entire nest egg, and they'd be in shambles again. I didn't feel safe about that. That's why I didn't feel safe continuing to keep stock in Tesla. It was I didn't trust the CEO enough in that business regard. Should I or shouldn't I? That's only a question that you can ask yourself. For me, my own personal inclination was that I didn't want to trust a lot of my investment with Tesla, not because I think the cars are crap or anything like that at all, not because I don't think SpaceX is awesome. It's because I didn't trust Elon Musk with my money. That doesn't mean I don't respect Elon Musk, and that's a very clear kind of divider that I want to put in there, a really clear signifier I want to put in there. Just because you don't trust somebody with your money doesn't mean you don't trust them or don't respect them altogether. How many friends of ours do we love with every fiber of our being, but we wouldn't trust them with a potato? Love you, bro, but I'm not leaving my kid alone with you because you might fling him off of a seesaw. You might jump on the other end of the seesaw. You don't know. Like, you're fun and all, but I kind of maybe wouldn't trust the kid with you. Or maybe you're at the shooting range and you're firing guns and there's one guy like, I love you, Bob, but I'm not going to let you try this gun because I'm scared of you a little bit in that regard. Maybe you have a friend, and I don't know why you keep this friend close, but maybe it's just an acquaintance that you have that otherwise you respect their grind and their passion until they ask you to come out in the car with them and smoke crystal meth, and they're not joking, and you're just like, are you serious, dude? Hey, yeah, it just helps you, let's get pumped up for the whatever. Are you? No. Absolutely not. And it is very troubling that you think this is a good common idea, that this is just what people do to get pumped up for something. That's psychotic. You're a good person, you have a good heart, but that is absolutely psychotic, and I wish you all the best, but I am keeping you at an arm's distance for the rest of my life now. Not because you're currently doing drugs, but because you think it's just, there's nothing wrong with it. That kind of mental state with what you're doing, that you don't think there's anything wrong with it, is so much worse than actually doing the drug or the bad thing. That you have no problem with it is very concerning. You can rehab from the drug, but you can't rehab from that state of mind. At least not easily. So, when Elon Musk goes off on tears, reciting the national anthem and demanding that we reopen the country, and I'm not picking sides on whether or not that's a good or bad thing, but it's kind of out of left field, except not for Elon Musk. And when you know that he has a vested interest in opening his Tesla car factories to full production again. It makes you wonder, like, is he coming at it from, does he have your best intentions at heart? Does he have your best intentions at heart? Or is he just trying to make more money to go to Mars? That when he says reopen the country and give people their freedom back, does that mean is it because he wants you listening right now to be able to go to McDonald's more easily? Or do you think it's because he wants to produce more Tesla vehicles and make more billions of dollars so that he can fulfill his goal of seeing a settlement on Mars at least start to be built in his lifetime? I would wager that it's the latter. I would wager that it's not that he cares about you being able to go about your day normally again. It's because he wants to open up his business ventures again. Now, I can't speak for Elon Musk, but it would make sense for that to be the motive. It would also make sense, and let's be clear here, it also makes sense that, yes, he has the general best interest of the country and of human beings in mind, letting us have our freedom back, so to speak, and go back to work and get our lives back to normal again. Maybe he does. Maybe at some level in his psychology, he actually feels bad for the common person hurting right now, that he does want us to go back to work and get back to normalcy. But you can't deny that also a big part of it, whether admitted or not, would be that he has his own business ventures too that he would like to see succeed. So it can be both. It can be 50% column A, 50% column B. It can be 90% column A, 10% column 1. It can be 10% column A, 90% column B. I don't know the mixture. It can be both is all I'm saying. But that doesn't negate from the fact that his psychology and his mental state is eccentric, and that means risk for stockholders, and that means risk for employees. That means risk for anybody invested in any way into any of his companies. When you have a hair trigger CEO that at any moment can tweet something that can single-handedly cause the value of the company to tumble. Him tweeting out that he's going to sell all of his possessions. What? Him tweeting out that that Tesla stock is too high. What? What? Who does that? Who does that? And that's the meat and potatoes of this podcast here. Eccentric geniuses and eccentric billionaires. Elon Musk is not the first. So some have speculated, and I can't confirm this because I'm not an expert on it, and to my knowledge, there hasn't been any. Elon Musk hasn't published any tests or anything like that, if he's even been tested for any of this. But somebody commented who has this mental illness, the illness of bipolarism, said that Elon Musk is displaying a lot of bipolar tendencies, being very manic and very invigorated and very gung-ho one moment, and then saying irrational things the next, and coming unhinged the next, or whatever he's doing. It seems very. It has all the calling cards of bipolar disorder. I'm not saying that he does have it. Nobody is saying for sure that, yes, Elon Musk definitely has bipolar disorder. Nobody would be stupid enough to make that sort of statement. But we can clearly surmise that there is something going on in his brain that does line up with geniuses in the past. I have family members that are geniuses, and if you're a genius, you are disproportionately more susceptible to mental illness than if you're not a genius. A lot of people hear the word genius and they want to be a genius, or he's a genius, or she's a genius, and think that life is just roses. In many ways, being a genius is a curse. And being a genius also, let's just be real here, doesn't make you smarter than anybody else. It doesn't. It has nothing to do with your accumulated knowledge. Nothing. It just means that you can think of things quicker. Maybe you're more witty, you can problem solve faster, but it has nothing to do with memorizing the encyclopedia. It has nothing to do with memorizing history. It has nothing to do with practical knowledge and practical gain knowledge. Genius is just a different way that the brain is wired. It can learn quicker. It can also forget things just as quick. Genius is not a blessing. In many ways, it is a curse. I mean, it can be a blessing and it can be a curse. There are many geniuses that wouldn't wish that curse on their worst enemy, because being a genius often comes with severe mental disabilities, severe mental issues that need to be dealt with throughout life. So the first genius I wanted to talk about is none other than Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla is one of the most prolific inventors in human history. There is very few people alive today who don't know who Nikola Tesla is. Now, maybe they don't have an intimate knowledge about who Nikola Tesla is. They might just think he invented the Tesla car, Elon Musk's car. But they have some sort of passing knowledge of Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla suffered severe obsessive compulsive disorder, severe OCD. And I just want to scratch the surface of it a little bit because the show isn't, if I made the show long enough to cover all of it intimately, it would be hours upon hours long. Nikola Tesla was fixated on the number 3. Anything divisible by 3, anything having to do with the number 3, he would circle around buildings 3 times before entering the buildings. He was fixated on the number 3. He would fold 18 napkins before eating. He would also fold 18 towels. When he visited hotels, he would have the room service bring him 18 towels. 18 is divisible by 3. 3 into 18 is 9. Then he could further divide it down, 9 into 3. He was fixated on 3 and fold 18 napkins before eating. He also had an extreme fear, an extreme phobia of germs because he I'm sure not just once, but many times he would look at the microorganisms in drinking water and he just scared himself silly. Said, I'm not drinking that, and that exacerbated his extreme phobia of germs. So he boiled everything he ate. Every single bit of food he ever ate, he boiled to try to kill the germs. Boiled everything sounds disgusting. I don't like anything. I don't like boiled chicken. I don't prefer anything boiled. I don't prefer eggs boiled. I don't prefer anything boiled. But he would boil everything he ate in an attempt to kill all the germs. Before he would eat, he would also calculate the cubic mass of food and how many chews it would take to efficiently digest. Again, his fixation on the number 3. He had an extreme phobia of round objects. I would imagine, I'm sure I could read into this and specify and find this out. I would imagine that the phobia of round objects comes from pi. 3.14 wasn't a perfect division of 3, that it was just off just enough to really freak him out, so he hated round objects because they were not evenly divisible by 3. Possibly. Just speculating. Pi is not perfect 3, it's 3.14. Repeating. Regardless, for whatever reason, he had an extreme phobia of round objects. He also had debilitating insomnia. He would often just pass out on his desk. His fellow lab partners would say, or helpers would say, that he'd just be working on something and just collapse. Like, one of those dolls that is held together by wires and you squeeze the base and they go limp and then you release the base and it tightens up and they pop back into position. He would just kind of collapse like one of those figurines at his desk. He had debilitating insomnia. And keep in mind, all of these things are things that are common traits that you're higher at risk if you have, or if you are a genius. Now, people can have these OCD and all these paranoias without being a genius, for sure. But I'm just saying geniuses are more prone to this type of thing. He died alone and in poverty. All of this mental illness, for all of his inventions and all of the wealth that he created for the world, and all of his breakthroughs and his notoriety, he died alone and in poverty. I seem to remember that he fell in love with a pigeon. Is that accurate? Don't quote me on that. But I believe he also developed a fascination with pigeons and thought he was in love with a pigeon. You know what? Let me verify that right now, because it's not like, again, I don't have Google. I'm just going to type in Tesla pigeon. Tesla pigeon. There you go. Tesla had an obsession with pigeons. Quote, Tesla allegedly loved an all-white pigeon romantically, as the story goes. The bird flew to tell him she was dying with a bright light in her eyes. After the bird died in 1922, Tesla knew that his life's work was finished. That is from website ewweb.com. I won't include the link. Just Google Tesla pigeon. It's the first thing that comes up. I'm just painting the picture here that Tesla was a genius and he had his battles with mental illness and he died alone and in poverty. So genius isn't in itself a blessing. Many times it is a curse. And yes, I'm gonna keep this all within the context of Elon Musk. I am not at all implying that Elon Musk has any of those symptoms or all of those symptoms or anything like that. But he has, apparently, with people who have bipolar disease, they have said they see traits in Elon Musk that they recognize in their own illness. But let's move on to Howard Hughes, because his tale is also interesting. Now, I didn't know this until recently, and maybe I should have, being from this area, being from Houston, but Howard Hughes was born in Humble, Texas. I grew up most of my life living like 3 miles from Humble, Texas. I've been to Humble many, many, many times. It's right down the street from my mom's house. Delory Motor Company is based in Humble, Texas. For those of you who do not live in Houston, Humble is basically I don't want to call it a suburb. It's its own city outside of Houston. It's where they first struck oil, or it's most famously known for striking oil in Texas. Hughes was born to a wealthy family with a silver spoon in his mouth. That was a seed money for getting started in life. He would later become a billionaire, as most of us know. Built a Spruce Goose aircraft. He had an intense fascination and love of aviation, setting many records himself. He later went on to produce and direct movies. There was a movie fairly recently in the recent history about Howard Hughes, and I think it was Leonardo DiCaprio played Howard Hughes. That's a good movie, and Leonardo DiCaprio did a good job. I think I've never met Howard Hughes, obviously, but he did a good job of illustrating here Howard Hughes's paranoia. Howard Hughes was definitely bipolar. He also had paranoid schizophrenia. He had severe OCD, a severe phobia of germs, amongst many, many more ailments. Howard Hughes was his appearance was so disfigured when he died in 1976 that he can only be identified by his fingerprints. That he wasn't maimed or anything like that. The mental illness took such a hold of him and affected his nutrition and everything about his life, and just altered his appearance so badly that when he died, the only way they could tell it's Howard Hughes is by taking official fingerprints. He also died with billions in the bank, but in his illness and in his state, he never wrote a will. And I believe it was in 1983 that 22 cousins or so, a few dozen of his cousins, they just dispersed the funds between them, and I think some lady came forward and said he was married to her briefly. It was a mess. It was a mess. He was a genius and a billionaire, and just a complete mess. Do you think that maybe, I can't speak for Howard Hughes because he's passed away, but I don't know, and this is a hard question, but would you have preferred that life? Let's say you could be a billionaire like Howard Hughes, but you lived in abject agony every day of your life because of mental illness? Or would you rather just be normal-minded, go about your life, do something you love, work every day doing something that you love, and value your richness and your wealth in another different way? Maybe you don't value, that your richness doesn't come from money or how much money you can generate. Maybe you have a rich life because you love your wife, you love your family, and you're doing a job that you don't hate. So your life is rich. There is a difference between there's a difference between being rich and being wealthy. Wealthy has everything to do with how much financial gain you earn, how much land you have, whatever, your personal wealth. Richness has nothing to do with wealth. It's a separate thing. You can be filthy rich and be a pauper, make almost nothing, because you love what you do, you love your family, you're surrounded by love, everything is perfect outside of finances, so you have a rich life. You have just what you need. Of course, if you don't have enough finances, it's hard to get what you need, but you see what I'm saying? You have water, you have food, a roof over your head, love, you're rich. I consider myself to be filthy rich because I have a loving family and a loving wife. My cats are stupid, but I don't count them to the richness of life. I get to do this. I get to do this podcast. I get to have my own radio show about geeky things. I get to indulge in geeky things. I consider my life to be rich, and I'm very, very thankful for that. Am I wealthy? Heck no. Absolutely heck No, but I have everything I need, and I'm very grateful for that. But back to the subject at hand. Genius doesn't necessarily mean a blessing. That is something I've said over and over in this episode. And I told you about, or we examined Nikola Tesla and Howard Hughes, just as two examples. The same story is told many, many times over with many, many other geniuses and billionaires. The difference is, though, so with Nikola Tesla and Howard Hughes and many other geniuses from the past, too long to list, astronomers, scientists, physicians, everything. I think one disadvantage to being a genius in modern times, being a rich, wealthy genius like Elon Musk in modern times, is Twitter. Nikola Tesla didn't have Twitter. Howard Hughes didn't have Twitter. They didn't have social media. They didn't have... The general public didn't have such instant access to the workings of the genius's brain, of the billionaire genius's brain. They could be respected from afar, having no idea that Nikola Tesla boiled all his food or was afraid of spheres or couldn't be around women with earrings for too long and died in love with a white pigeon. They didn't have to know all that. All that stuff could get out to the general public years later. They could form their opinion of this famous person from afar. I think it's kind of similar in politics, and specifically presidential races. I often think back to past presidents before social media and wonder, for instance, would we have revered and loved Lincoln today the way we do, the way he's preserved in the past? If Lincoln had a Twitter account, would he say eccentric things that would make you wonder about him? I think it's a luxury that past presidents, before President Obama, really he was the first one in our modern generation that used social media. When he was elected in 2008 and took office in 2009, he was the first president to use social media to that degree. So you could form your personal opinion of him, Obama, and you can form your personal opinion of Trump based on their tweets, for better or worse, however you want to look at it. Holy Lord, Twitter is such a scary thing. I tell myself, hey, if I am ever on sort of in the national spotlight or the global spotlight, and millions of people or hundreds of thousands of people or whatever know who I am, Twitter followers with Twitter influencers with hundreds of thousands of followers. First of all, that's kind of creepy to call it followers and everything. Some sort of social media influencer with millions. Maybe you were a movie star and you have millions, 30 million followers or whatever on Instagram and Twitter and all that. That seems like a curse to me. That seems so terrible to me that at any moment you could say something that doesn't age well. I will not get off too much of a tangent, but recently Kevin Hart, the comedian, the movie star, somebody resurfaced a tweet, found an old tweet that he said in like 2009 or something like that, 10 years ago. It was about gay people, and it didn't age well. And he took a lot of flack for it. And I think he was supposed to host the Oscars or something like that, and then either they asked him not to do it or he resigned from doing it in light of, during all this controversy, because someone pulled a tweet from 10 years ago that didn't age well. So my only point here really is that in this modern time, for the Kevin Hart thing, that really was affecting his own wealth, most of all. That kind of tweeting something that doesn't age well, the only person at risk, really, at most risk, was his own well-being, was his own wealth, were his own contracts, were his own movie contracts, were his own appearance contracts, gigs, whatever. Arguably, you could say that the movie studio would take a hit if there was a Kevin Hart movie that was currently out, and then amongst this controversy, people stopped going to see the movie because of something he said a decade ago. but when you have somebody like Nikola Tesla or Howard Hughes, if they had a Twitter account, I keep wanting to call it Tweeter. If they had a Twitter account, it wasn't just their wealth that they could affect. If they had some sort of invention or they oversaw a publicly traded company, they're risking thousands of lives, thousands of livelihoods, I should say. To a lesser degree, directly people's lives, but definitely livelihoods. So the difference between Nikola Tesla, if you can already see this coming, difference between Nikola Tesla, Howard Hughes, those types from those ages, and Elon Musk, modern day Nikola Tesla, modern day Howard Hughes, is that maybe there's too many yes people around Elon Musk. He has a Twitter and he can ruin it not only for himself, but people who invest in his companies. With one tweet, he can devalue the stock in his own company by billions of dollars. With one tweet. With one tweet about Tesla stock is too high. I'm selling all my earthly possessions. What? Could you imagine being a stockholder? And I can't anymore because I don't hold stock. Could you imagine if Warren Buffett, he owns Berkshire Hathaway. That's how he got his, well, I'm not sure that's how he got his billions of dollars, but he's a multi-billion billionaire. Warren Buffett generally stays pretty low key, stays kind of out of the spotlight. He is the one who opened Martha's Vineyard. He loves Dairy Queen so much that he brought a Dairy Queen to Martha's Vineyard. There's no other Dairy Queens in the Northeast, to my knowledge, but I've been to the one in Martha's Vineyard where I tooted in a little boy's face. It was an unfortunate, that just kind of came out of left field. I apologize. I was waiting in line at Warren Buffett's Dairy Queen in Cape Cod on Martha's Vineyard, on Martha's Vineyard, and there was a little boy causing a ruckus or whatever, and I had a toot. I had been on a moped all day with my brother. We had two mopeds, and he was behind me, and one fell out, and I turned around, and the little boy's face was so horrified. He was at the perfect height to be in the danger zone. Oh, my mother-in-law listens to this. Hi, Susie. So I've been to Warren Buffett's Dairy Queen in Martha's Vineyard, where I had an unfortunate incident with a toot and a youngster who bore the brunt of it. Oh, I'm getting hot. So Warren Buffett, by and large, stays low-key. He doesn't tweet all sorts of insane things. Does Warren Buffett even have a Twitter? That's so low-key he is. I haven't even looked up or bothered to know if Warren Buffett, ultra-billionaire, one of the richest people in human history, has a Twitter. Because it doesn't matter, because he doesn't use it very much, or he doesn't say stupid things on it. Now, I don't know if Warren Buffett is a legitimate genius. If he is a genius, he is certainly aware of all the pitfalls that can come with being a genius, and he avoids them. Maybe he knows that if he is a genius and he has those mental perils, that he says, okay, well, me and Twitter, in a public shouting soapbox would not mix well. And to some degree, Elon Musk, I'm not saying he has officially these diagnosed mental illnesses, but he doesn't have that inhibitor chip, that's for certain. He doesn't have that little birdie on his shoulder saying, hey, maybe don't tweet that your stock is too high. Maybe don't call an engineer in Indonesia a pedophile. Maybe zip your lid a little bit. Just keep your mouth shut with these types of things. I don't think Elon Musk even cares about that kind of thing. He knows he's a genius. He knows he's changing the world, and nobody's contesting that. Nobody's saying that he's not a genius. Nobody's saying that he isn't changing the world. Nobody is saying that his endeavors to put a person on Mars is nothing short of amazing. But you can be accomplishing amazing things or attempting amazing things, but still people are smart enough and wise enough to know that, hey, you're really good at this, but you're really bad at this. And that's kind of a differentiator, and I think that's where kind of genius a lot of times pulls the veil over people's eyes, is they can't tell that they're bad at something. They might just think that they're good at everything, that their genius is so overwhelming. I I am planning to put people on Mars so I can handle Twitter. There's a very distinct separation between being a role model, being an outspoken role model, and being a genius behind the scenes. Basically, just let your work speak for itself. And I think I used it last time. It's this principle that, what about it being a fool? Hold on. It's better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to speak and remove all doubt. I'm not saying that Elon Musk is a fool. That's kind of an interesting concept, though. You can be a genius and still be foolish. You can be wise and still be foolish. But I think a wise person recognizes that just because you're a genius and wisdom are not part and parcel. In matter of fact, genius and wisdom are often dire enemies. That genius often deceives the individual to think they are wise. Does that make sense? Elon Musk, again, he's trying to put people on planet Mars. So if he can handle putting people on Mars, he thinks he can certainly handle Twitter. But self-delusion is often part of genius. It's certainly a part of addiction. And that's another reason why geniuses are more likely to be addicted to anything. The self-delusion. I'm so great. I can handle everything in my life. I can do whatever I want because I'm so smart. Nothing's going to get past me. And then he tweets that the Tesla stock is too high and he ruins thousands of people's lives. He puts his own company in jeopardy by being such a loose cannon because he's self-delusioned at least a little bit to think he can handle all of it himself. There's not that inhibitor chip, or he doesn't have much of a functioning inhibitor chip that makes him second guess it. And in fact, that little angel on his shoulder is a little bit self-deluded and says, yeah, tweet it. Bro, you are making rockets. You are selling rockets to NASA. You're putting people on Mars. You built electric cars. You are pushing humankind into the future. Man, Twitter ain't nothing. Just tweet that Tesla stock's too high. Tweet that you're going to sell all of your earthly possessions. Just go for it. That's complete. Everybody will see it from your point of view, Elon. So just tweet it. Just tweet it. You are wise enough to tweet it. You are smart enough to tweet it. That's the self-delusion. At least a little bit. So there's two paths Elon Musk could have taken in the modern age. He is privileged to be alive at a time where he has access to the kinds of technologies that makes his dreams a reality. That we have the battery technology, the electric motor technology, that we have the rocket technology, and a whole entire workforce educated, drawing off the shoulders of giants before them, that he can have this workforce that's smart enough and educated enough to build the electric cars and to help him build the rockets and the Boring Company and whatever else he's got going on. He's very privileged to be alive at a time like this in the bleeding edge of technology, where he could dream of putting somebody on Mars and actually feasibly, technically, have the technology or push the technology forward enough to actually do it. Versus if Elon Musk was born even 30 years ago, putting somebody on Mars wouldn't even be imaginable, wouldn't even be a dream. Actually, 30 years ago, maybe. But you see what I'm saying? If he was born in the late 1800s or something, if he was a contemporary of Nikola Tesla, he could dream about putting people on Mars, but be 150 years too early on it. On the other side of that coin is that he also exists in an era where social media is a thing. And he can't just be a silent genius, a silent, well-respected genius like Nikola Tesla or Howard Hughes. That he can be a genius, and now people are going to know of his eccentricities, of his downfalls. And they can say that you can look at a genius billionaire like Elon Musk and be like, wow, I am glad I'm not like that. Again, does that make sense? I think I could ask the question, would you like to be an Elon Musk, or would you like to be you and just happy? Would you take billions of dollars and be, I'm not saying Elon Musk is unhappy. You get the point here. There's so much weight on the shoulders. Does there need to be all that weight on his shoulders? To some degree, yes. He's in charge of his companies. He holds thousands of lives in his hands. There are people that will die in the course of research, especially going to Mars and astronauts and all of that. He does have an incredible amount of responsibility, but it's so puzzling to know that someone like Elon Musk has all that responsibility and then he tweets recklessly. That Nikola Tesla couldn't be so reckless with the masses because he didn't have a Twitter. Howard Hughes couldn't be so reckless with the masses because he didn't have a Twitter. It's an interesting dichotomy that happens in modern age with geniuses and billionaires. The dirty laundry is all over the place. They air their own dirty laundry all over the place. Some people are famous because they aired their dirty laundry all over the place. They have no appreciable skills or intellect to share with the world. They just did something really stupid and put it out there, and now they're famous. Now they're millionaires for it. That's certainly a world we live in right now. And the way they maintain their income is, oh, didn't you do that stupid thing 10 years ago and you're famous for it, and now you're an influencer now? That's what they call it. Just hold up our vitamins or our product and we'll give you $500,000 if you tweet a picture of you holding our product. These companies don't care that you're famous for nothing, just that you have the eyes, and that's all that matters when it comes to advertising. That if I'm not going to go down that path. Not going to go down that path of relating it to what I'm doing here and blah, blah, blah. I'm not bitter about it or anything. I love what I'm doing here. But again, I'm not going to go down that path. I'm going to do what I'm going to do, build my audience how I'm going to build it, try to build it as ethically and responsibly and as candidly as possible, and maintain my richness the entire way. That's the modus operandi, the mission objective of Geek Therapy Radio. Whatever growth I get, you are all on the same page with me. And hopefully I don't get famous for telling a story about how I farted in a little kid's face. If that happens, I will cross that bridge. I will deal with that scrutiny and fame as it arises. The one last thing I wanted to touch on, because that's just where we're at in the show right now. Apple MacBook. We don't have an Apple MacBook 14-inch yet. The announcement today was just for a revamped line of MacBook Pro 13 inches. We are not going to get a new MacBook Pro 14-inch today, at least. This year, at least. It's not looking like it. But we have a refreshed MacBook Pro 13s. The controversy with the MacBook Pro 13, the current MacBook Pro 13, the latest MacBook Pro 13, one part of it's really great. They did away with the butterfly keyboard. It is now the scissor keyboard. What do they call it? The magic keyboard mechanism. So it should be a lot more reliable. That's 100% great. Even the processors are great, except for the fact that the base model of MacBook Pro 13-inch comes with 8th generation processors. So when they advertise and the RAM is the slower RAM on the base models, versus you get optioned up to the $1,800 range, and that's when you get 10th generation Intel processors, and that's when you get the faster DDR4 RAM. But if you're looking to get a new base model MacBook Pro 13-inch, it's not going to have the 10th gen chip in it, and it's not going to have the faster RAM in it. And that's not deceitful, but at the same time, it's weird to me. It's still weird to me. You know that I praise Apple where Apple deserves praise, and I'll criticize Apple continually where Apple deserves criticism. I always have this beef with the name Pro in MacBook Pro. And yes, you can argue that, well, Pro doesn't just mean processors, and Pro doesn't just mean the GPU in it. Pro can mean the accurate display. Pro can mean a good keyboard. Pro can mean reliability. Yes, I agree, all those things, absolutely. But I've got a hard time with the current MacBook Pro 13, that the actual Pro features, so faster RAM and faster processor, 10th generation Intel processor, those professional features are only come at a premium. You have to select an upgrade to those professional features. The base model of the MacBook Pro doesn't have the higher performance professional CPU and doesn't have the higher performance professional GPU, Iris graphics. So why? It's a funny position that it puts the base model MacBook Pro in, because that Pro name on there, this seems extra silly now. Pro should only be reserved for the top of the line, bleeding edge specs. Now, I'm not saying that the MacBook Pro 13, all in all, is a terrible device. If you want a MacBook Pro 13, I will say that once you start speccing it up to the 10th gen processor and the faster RAM, then you might want to be looking at the 16-inch if you can carry it around, or what have you. You might kind of look around the product line to see what you can manage for the same price. $1,800. Okay, $1,800. What does that get me with the Mac Pro 13? Okay, what does $1,800 get me with the Mac Pro 16-inch? Or how far does it get me there? You have to do all of that budgeting and research, and find what's right for you at that price point. But I guess that's always kind of been the thing with MacBooks, MacBook Air, MacBook Pro, all the MacBooks, is that the Apple tax means that you're not getting, at least in the base model, you're not getting the latest and greatest technology, but you're still paying a premium for that Apple logo. And the 13-inch MacBook Pro base model now is a victim of that. Yes, it has a better keyboard. Yes, you get twice the amount of storage for the same price. Those are very good things. Overall, the new MacBook Pro 13, even base model, is an improvement over last generation. It just really irks me sometimes. I don't lose sleep over it, but it's silly that it's not the most professional. The base model isn't the most professional. That Pro name in there always weirds me out. I will say, and I don't have a dog in this fight, but I can only come at it from my personal point of view. If I was in the market for a new Mac laptop right now, and it was between the MacBook Pro 13-inch or the MacBook Air, and knowing that I'd have to spec for the similar price, I might go for a MacBook Air. It depends entirely on my needs. It depends entirely on what I want out of the thing. But if you're spending that much money, it might be worth looking over and speccing out a MacBook Air to a similar price point to a MacBook Pro 13-inch. They're a very similar form factor. The MacBook Air is going to be a little bit thinner, a little bit lighter, but it's going to be down to you. Maybe your dollar can go further with the MacBook Air versus a base model MacBook Pro 13-inch. So you can only answer that for yourselves. I'm just putting it out there that base model, the new 2020 MacBook Pro 13-inch the base model doesn't have the 10th gen chips. And the 10th gen chips are where it's at as far as performance goes. Maybe we'll see a MacBook Pro 14 in the future. Maybe we'll see MacBook Pro 13s in the future with AMD processors, which would be amazing. I would love to see MacBook Pros go over to full AMD. I can't see in the near future where MacBook Pros would use Apple's proprietary processors. I think they may go Intel and or AMD for quite a while. I think the new MacBook, maybe the MacBook Air might possibly use Apple's own in-house silicon, the A13, A14, whatever's coming down the pipe. We know that Apple's going to do that soon. They've done that with the iPad Pro. They're doing that with the new MacBook. We could see proprietary Apple chips in the new MacBook series, not MacBook Air, not MacBook Pro, but the 12-inch MacBook could very well see the next generation of MacBook have the Bionic processors that they have in the iPad Pro and such. But for the Pro line, MacBook Pro, 13-inch, 14-inch, or 16-inch, whatever variants are thereof, I think it's going to be Intel and AMD for the near future. I always hesitate to bring up Apple news because it's so iterative, and there's really good there are benefits. The keyboard is what you're going to interact with most on a laptop. So the fact that they've improved the keyboard by going back to an old design of it, an old reliable design of it, that's great. New MacBook Pros, new MacBook Airs have the scissor keyboard, the Magic Keyboard. That's great. That is great. They have double the storage, the amount of hard drive space, solid state space for the same amount of money. That's great. But there's still little niggles that I have with the base models. You're going to have to spend a lot more money. And if you're already up at $800 for a MacBook 13, then you're going to be seriously thinking about, or whatever the price is. If you're over $2,000, you're going to be thinking, well, maybe I could swing a 16-inch. It's only another a little bit of real estate in my backpack or my bag. Maybe I just, for the same price, get all the more features in this bigger 16-inch model. It's really weird. It's really hard to recommend the base model MacBook Pro 13-inch to anybody. That to get any real value out of it, and the value is a hard thing to discuss with Apple when the Apple tax exists. You can see why I hesitate to bring up Apple. Unless they do something radical, then I try not to talk about it too much. Same thing with smartphones. It's just this, there's nothing radical with smartphones to me worth talking about, really. I was going to do an entire podcast, or at least mention it, the 2020 iPhone SE, 4.6-inch screen. It's a smaller screen. I think it's 4.6 inches. It's got huge chin bezels and forehead on it. It's not the screen doesn't go. It's not the bezel-less design of the flagship iPhones. But at the same time, I thought the 2020 SE for $400, $500 is going to be an absolute smash hit for Apple. That I couldn't agree more with that decision. That I wish Apple all the best of luck in selling millions of 2020 iPhone SEs. Not because they're revolutionary, but because they are not revolutionary. Because it's arguably going to be one of the best budget phones, mid-tier phones that you can buy right now with any company. But smartphone progress and MacBook Pro, like doesn't give me the fizz, so to speak. I report it to you, and by the time I report it to you, I already figure that most people listening already know about it. They've already seen Dave 2D's videos. They've already watched Linus Tech Dev videos. They've already seen MKHB videos. They've seen a billion other people on YouTube and influencers and Twitter and all that kind of stuff talk about the new MacBook line. By the time they get to me, I can't tell you anything new. I can only give you my opinion on such things. Same thing with smartphones. Same thing with all of that. It's hard to get fizzed up about smartphones and new Apple products. Now, if Apple brings AMD to the table and they go with AMD over Intel, that's kind of big. That's kind of big news. When they bring out the new MacBook and it's on their own in-house silicon, that's going to be big news too. And I can't wait to talk about that. But overall, I get way more enjoyment out of talking about kind of retro tech and other geeky things I'm geeking out about. You want to hear all about my old Palm Pilot? That's kind of the stuff that gets me excited. So that's it for this podcast today. It's over an hour. Thank you so much for listening. Remember, this week, I'm going to release the full over 2-hour episode of the roundtable between me, David Murray, the 8-Bit Guy, Clint from Lazy Game Reviews, and Colin from This Does Not Compute, our over 2-hour roundtable discussion on all things geeky. It's going to be great. So stick around for that. Thank you so much for listening. I love you all. Seriously, thank you all for listening. I hope you're all doing well. Remember that we're all geeks about something. So lean into your inner geek and share your geek thing with others. Above all else, remember that you are worthy of love. You are worthy of giving love. You are worthy of receiving love. And you are also worthy of your own self-respect. You are. And I need to reiterate that over and over again, especially in these times when we're dealing with lots of issues that many of us haven't had to deal with before. It's a unique, challenging time. I need you to know that you are worthy of love. And I need you to know that you are worthy of your own self-confidence and self-respect. You are. If you don't believe me on that, email me, geektherapy@iheartmedia.com. I'd be happy to talk to you. geektherapy@iheartmedia.com. You are loved. You are loved. You are loved. Talk to you next time.